That because I met him, I was working in a hotel in Sydney, Australia, and I had all the boys come over. There was Andre the Giant, Killer Carl Crop, I could name so many, J.J. Dillon, this one here. I've known these people for 40 years plus. And I mean, I just happened to be working the front desk when he was staying at this, they were all staying at the same hotel. And of course, this was the days before computers, before cell phones, before the internet. So they were in a whole different, strange country. So, you know, they were lonely and they would get mail and everything. So I would hand them their mail and became great friends with so many of them. As I said, 40 years later, still friends with them. So I had just happened to be at the front desk when he was checking in. And of course, there was a rule you didn't associate with any of that. And that wasn't anything, because I knew nothing about wrestling. They were just friends. They were just people. They were just guests. They were just, you know, and they became friends. Never went to a wrestling match in my life. Had no idea. I mean, here I am with Andre the Giant and then the midgets. So I learned at a very young, I was young then, very young age, that, you know, you never judge anybody by their appearance. You get to know people that are inside. Because people sometimes judge, well, as you know, they judge people. So he'd come in, and that was okay, and we got to be friends and everything. And this one night, I just happened to be filling in at the front desk till 11 o'clock at night, which was very unusual. And they all came back from their matches. They'd all gone to matches, and my boss, who was a Texan gentleman, had another restaurant called Bourbon and Beef that was up the road. So they all said, well, why don't you come up to the road and, you know, have a drink with us? And I said, oh, well, that's okay. Well, we were all sitting, there was like maybe 12 of us, all these strange characters, so to speak, sitting at a table. Well, one by one, they would get up to use the bathroom. Well, they never came back. One by one, all of a sudden went 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Then there was Killer Carl Crop, and Frank, and myself. And then Carl gets up and leaves, didn't come back. And then I found out later that he had arranged it all. So I have to admit, he was a good worker. And of course, here I am still sitting here after all this time, and it just kind of evolved. We were just such good friends for such a long time until he happened to, you know, come back over here. And then another thing, I wasn't thinking, everyone's saying, oh, you know, these wrestlers, you know, they're just using you. They're in a strange country. They're just, you know, having a friendship. Well, as you also know, Frank kind of left some territories, not so much in good stead, and I know a lot of you probably know that. So he came back this one night, because he was in Australia maybe 9 months, so it was quite a long time that he was back and forth. So he came back, he said, well, I'm leaving to go home tomorrow. Oh, okay, fine, well, nice to know you. And then he had this lot of money. He puts it on the table and said, I'd like you to come with me. Well, if anybody knows you, Frank was really tight with the dollar. So I figured out, well, he must trust me, because he would not leave this money. I could have taken that money and just stayed, because it was quite a bit of money. But as I said, the story's finished. Here I am, I'm still sitting here.
Robert, you had noted that he put such a focus on Japan, not just for the money and the loyalty, but because of his hard-hitting style. He wanted to make as much money as possible, because he knew just with his particular style, he thought he can't keep that up for a huge matter of time. So I guess, did you ever have discussions with him about, like, hey, Frank, I'm a little concerned about your style of wrestling or your overall health or what you're doing out there?
Yes, he was very honest. He would come home and discuss a lot of things with me. And I know, as you said, he put the emphasis on Japan, because they respected him and they treated him right. And he always used to say, you will never believe how it is when I'm over there. Because most of the time they were honest, they were respectful. So, and we discussed that, and he knew that in the States, there wasn't any room for his style of work, because it wasn't that he was hard to do business. If you were honest with him, he would do anything for you, like going to Herb, like going to the small show, because Herb, when he said something, he kept his word. So he never had any problem with anything that Herb wanted to go to his shows, because Herb, you're upfront guy, and he always respected. I mean, when he came back from your show, he was always happy, because he didn't have any trouble. There was no animosity, there was no, this is it, this is how it's going to be, and never no problem. And in Japan, it was the same way. So yes, we did discuss a lot about that, but he knew that he was getting older and that it was going to be hard to keep up the style in Japan, because it's real, like you said, Stan, it was real, it was hard hitting, it was, you know, the total package over there. But he knew that he would probably come back and do a stint with Vince at some point of time, because he knew that the match that everybody wanted at that point was, of course, Hulk Hogan, you know, Beauty and the Beast. But he knew, could he trust? So, well, it never came to that, so we didn't go that much further because of what happened. But he was thinking of other things beyond wrestling too, because he knew at some point, like every point, you have to think about. So he was starting up, he'd started up a company called BAM, B-A-M, Brody Athletic Management. And he was going out and doing appearances, and his goal, he was working with a gentleman from the University of Texas in San Antonio. They were going to go around schools. We'd already bought a wrestling ring. He was going to go around schools, set up a ring at the school, and do a skit like, you know, this was when drugs were very big in the schools. Dear, I think the program was called. And he figured out that if you go do the ring and talk about the dangers, I mean, these are kids at that point of their life, that you send somebody of authority and they don't listen, as you know. You send someone in like Frank, looking the way he does, and talking to them, that yes, they may actually listen. We had also bought a piece of property that he was going to make like a boys' camp in the school holidays, that the kids that were disadvantaged, that didn't have, you know, much, that they could come out, you know, the kids that were in a dangerous situation, that they could come out, go to this camp and just learn, maybe learn values of life. So this was his goal beyond wrestling, because he was always thinking ahead, because he treated wrestling like a business. It wasn't, he didn't get caught up in becoming Bruiser Brody. He always remembered that he was Frank British. So he could define the two. So as a business, this was his business, and he treated wrestling as a business. And he just wanted, when he went out in the ring, he just wanted, he wanted to give the fans the best night of their life. He wanted, they were paying money. And that is part of why wrestling is, you know, as a business, because without the fans, there is no business. So that was really, his goal was just to go out, give the very best, that they left and they felt that they got value for money. So he had a lot of different plans. And like I said, all he was thinking was the fans. So any fans here, thank you, you know, because you are what the business is all about, are the fans.
But I want to ask, Barbara, you know, because Bruiser was such an intimidating presence, but obviously you and your son knew him on a whole different level, but was it difficult for your son at his young age to watch his dad wrestle in the ring? Would he get concerned about his dad, or was it just kind of bizarre? Because I know I was talking about this with some of the other guys that have, we have some young children, and like the first time they got to 3 years old and saw people wrestle, they start crying like, Daddy's not supposed to get hit like that.
You know, because he was only 7 years old when everything happened. He never saw his dad wrestle. Only a couple of times if he was working Fritz's territory or Blanchard's territory, we would drive with him, like to Corpus Christi or something. But we would go walk on the riverfront, or we would go walk around the city and meet him after the matches. So unfortunately, which is sad, he never did see his son wrestle. And when I talked to him about it, he said, well, people ask me about my dad, but I was too young. He said, I don't really remember much because I was too young, which that's the unfortunate thing that's happened sometimes when life throws you curves in your life. And, he was the one that missed out on so much, because last night I was watching Diana's son and Jerry Briscoe's son wrestle, and I thought, what a difference, what could have been if things hadn't have happened. So that's the unfortunate thing. I wished he had more memories, but now, because he said, I just don't remember my dad. And he said, people ask me, and he said, what can I say, because I was too young. So yes, it was unfortunate. There's a couple of strange little stories. If the school was having like a show and tell, he took his dad to school for the show and tell. And the teachers, it was like they loved it. Harry is trying to sit in these little school chairs. Everyone has kids, and you know how the school chairs are at the school. And he's sitting there, and he was the show and tell. So it was, the teachers loved it. And when, after everything happened, they even accommodated, because it was in the school holidays, and when he went back to school, they had him with his best friends and everything for the transition to be. But you're talking about how he looked and how people were afraid of him. Well, for Jeff, he was dad. He wasn't fearsome. He didn't look any different. He was dad, so that was a normal dad to him. So, yes, he did try to do as much with family as he could. And I have to admit, just one of the memories that Jeff has a slight memory of was he took us, I think it was the Six Flags over Texas, just before it was the school holidays, before everything happened. And well, Frank didn't like heights. He didn't want anyone to know, but he really didn't like heights. Well, Jeff wanted to ride this ride. I think it was whatever it is, you went way, way up, tall, and then it came down in water. I forget what the name of it was, but it went up, then in the water, got wet. The thing got stuck. Up there, with all the people in the car. And here he is with his son, trying not to show any fear whatsoever. And the thing got stuck. I'm down below. I didn't ride it. I was down below. And I knew, I thought, oh my gosh, what is going on? With all these people in the car, because it was one of these, 3 seats here. It was a big old thing with a lot of people in there. And I knew. And I saw the people walking up to try and fix it, and I went, oh my goodness, he came down and he said, that was one of the most scariest things that I have been